some legal folks.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. Wrong context. More context. Yesterday on the stand-up call, we have all the teams present. Do we know where everyone's status is? We just want to make sure we didn't like scare any people away.
Oh.
Maybe Maeve knows that too.
Okay, so Mike is here today. Tyler's also here today. I think James, were you on the call yesterday or no? You missed.
I missed it yesterday.
Yeah, so everyone's back. We didn't scare people.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're taking care of folks. I want to make sure everyone's happy and yeah,
As happy as
happy as can be, right? Yeah. Relative.
Right. So I think we wait a few more minutes for everybody else to get on. I think maybe while we're waiting, we can figure out. I know that Mia's team has already done something, and Sinead and Fanola also did something. So it's really between Mike and Tyler, and then I think it's Jason, James, and Lenny to share something that new that they've learned. So between you guys, who would want to share something today? You can just raise your hand. Don't fight over it.
I guess we could, because we also think we finished our interview. So.
Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. So Tyler and Mike, you are saved for today. But you are going to have to do something tomorrow. So just think about something that you've learned. And then I think what we'll do is we'll also revisit whether if this is beneficial to people or if there's another thing we can do.
It doesn't have to be super detailed. You don't have to do a whole presentation on it. Just
a PowerPoint,
what's going on
12 sides.
And sharing what's working,
Okay, I think we've got everybody. Right, so.
Okay, Mom, go and by yourself.
So, okay, right. The first thing we're going to do is just maybe outline what the meeting's going to look like. It's going to look very much like yesterday's, where Jason, James, and Eleni, who's not on this call, but who's part of that team, they're going to share something that they've learned, and they feel like they have possibly finished their interviews. So I'm thinking perhaps we could do a demo tomorrow, which might be fun. And then we'll talk about if anyone's having any blockers with their interviews or otherwise. And then we will go into action points, make sure everyone knows what they're doing. And then finally talk about the new form that we worked on in terms of testing, and that Quentin did the COVID housing form, and then maybe just the TRO and the 209A as well. So to start, James and Jason, you want to take it away?
Sure. So I think that kind of like similar to what James put in one of the channels yesterday, we had like a talk with Quentin where we went over how to like make sort of subsequent interview pages conditional on like a yes answer to a previous question. So that became a big help for making our interview process more like to make more sense when like going through it.
Okay, that sounds good. And you said that's in the channel?
Yeah, I think James put in the code channel.
Okay, I'll check that out. Yeah, James?
I was going to say, I posted that there, and I think Quentin posted the video right after that.
Oh, yes, I did see that. Okay, perfect. The other thing that I noticed that Quentin posted in the code channel, which might be beneficial if you haven't seen, is how to replace basic questions. He put 2 or 3 steps in there about how to do that. So if you want to...
Just want to interject how to override specific questions from basic questions. You're not replacing the file, just to be clear.
Yeah. So say that the way that it's asked is something that you don't really like. You can just override that question in the way that Quentin showed in that channel, code channel as well. Okay, thank you so much for sharing that, Jason and James. And if anyone wants to check that out, there's a video in the code channel, which will show you how to do that. Okay, blockers. Who has blockers? You can raise your hand. I'm going to give you 5 seconds. A blocker doesn't have to be major. Hey? It can just be, if you're struggling with a question, if you're struggling with the how to program something, and then we'll direct you as to who will take care, who will assist you. So any blockers going once? Everybody is just nailing us. So good. I'm looking. I can't see. Oh, James, so that you guys, you never rub your eyes when you ask someone to ask a question. You're just gonna keep super still, otherwise you're gonna get called on. Okay, I don't see any blockers. So then the next question, of course, is action points, right? So if you're not having any blockers, and maybe I should have phrased this, that a blocker could be that you don't know what to do next, right? So that can come up now in terms of action points. So I'm looking specifically at the different teams. And I'm thinking now, like, does everybody know what they're doing? And it's okay to say that you don't, right? You're all very happy working on the interviews that you're working on. And I know Jason and James said that they feel confident that they're almost finished. So they're probably the only ones who can be without an action point legitimately. If you guys are still working on your interviews, that's really your action point, but you might need something that's more specific. Is that the case? How do you guys feel? Good or not good? You can just
I'd also point out that if people are really feeling they're done, then it means they need new action points.
Good point. But I think before we assign new things, I think it would be beneficial to review what you have and how you've done it. And I think from somebody who's also learning how to do this, it would be interesting to see that and how you guys program the interview. And I'm wondering if it would be interesting to do a demo of your interview, and maybe you can just present it. Not only for like a formal presentation, just as if you were taking somebody through it and showing them how you did it and how you reached the final thing. So I'm wondering, I don't want to put you on the spot right now, but perhaps tomorrow, if you would come to the meeting with that, that'd be okay. And then Mike and Tyler get a day off from telling us something new.
Unless Tyler actually needs to make his hours. In which case, maybe people could get an introduction to testing.
Right. So that's another thing that. Yes, Kate.
Okay.
I also think with the student forms, or with all the forms, I think we probably want SME review as like maybe before testing.
Yeah.
I feel like that might result in pretty substantial changes.
Yeah.
Language and flow.
And I don't remember which form they have, so I don't know if I'm the SME for that or not.
So the SME includes readability?
I think probably maybe both. So maybe like a subject matter SME, and then I don't know, not to make Caroline do everything, but.
And to be clear, I wasn't suggesting that they necessarily do testing on their form.
Oh,
right.
I was just suggesting that they get acquainted with the testing process.
Okay.
Good. To the extent there's backlog of testing work or process to be learned, that could be the next.
There's definitely process to be learned.
I mean, they could set up scenarios for their own tests, for example.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, is that it might be, I've learned a lot
for their own nature. Yeah.
I've learned a lot about development through the testing process, like things that I didn't even think you should look for and things like that. And it teaches you a lot, about what you've worked on and what you've developed past the stage of you've developed it, that's it. You work through the testing process and then resolving the bugs and stuff. So it's quite a beneficial process to learn about. How we've done it, I'm not necessarily saying is right, but I think we've developed something that's pretty sturdy, and it works well. We've caught bugs and issues and made improvements. So I'm just thinking now, okay, so action points. Finola and Sinead are still working on their form, and you guys are comfortable with what you're doing and making progress. And then you got Mia and Jack and Benny's not on this call, right? No. You guys are you still just working away on your form?
So we actually, we did a lot of work this morning with Quentin and Michelle, and we figured out a lot of our small blockers. And we're basically on one last point where our form, because it's like a family motion form, it's probably common that if they can have multiple children. And if there's multiple children, I believe that there's separate docket numbers. So we're just trying to figure out a way to that's our next step, is to figure out a way to put multiple docket numbers on our form where it really doesn't look like it can fit multiple docket numbers. And we may have to rework certain, move around certain parts of the PDF to be able to fit other docket numbers, but that's our next step.
I'm not, sorry, Quentin? It's really quiet.
Sorry.
I had flagged that as something to check with Kate about. Am I really quiet? I could turn off the microphone here.
No, I zoned out for a second and I missed what you were checking about.
So I'm just aware that we don't want to actually go into the issue right now,
Right.
but I think maybe what we could do is we could take, that issue is pinging a couple of things with me, such as changing actual forms that the court is used to seeing in a certain way. That's one of the main ones. And I think maybe this is a conversation that, it's a family law form. Just remind me which one you're doing again, please.
Generic motion, family law.
Perhaps and you've spoken to Kate about this as well.
Yeah, we spent a while.
So as we said, shall we make an appointment to talk about this later?
So that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to figure out who is going to be talking about that. So it'll be, I'm happy to jump on that call just with the experience that I've gotten in editing forms and the pros and cons of that. And then maybe Kate can also, because she's obviously the expert in this field.
Yeah, I have a real work meeting today from like 2 till probably 3:30, but I could do any time after that.
Okay, well,
or 1 till 2:30. Sorry.
Oh, no, okay, yeah, no.
Sorry, yeah.
I'll just put down some points in a chat in our chat, and then we can figure out when to talk about it. Okay. So then the other team is Tyler and Mike. So, you guys are still working away on your form?
Yeah, we're still working away. We're still putting together the interview. It's tough.
You were working from a docx, so you were actually just creating it from scratch.
Yeah, so that's what I've been learning, and I know Tyler too. We've been talking about how we're just trying to teach ourselves everything that we need to know. So it's just kind of a slow moving process, but I've also been really unexpectedly busy this week. So
don't feel like you have to teach yourself either, though. So like that, yeah, I know we kind of left you hanging a little bit at the very beginning, but I guess Sinead and Finola can say if they thought it was helpful or at the right level of detail. But we made a lot of progress by actually just facing a specific thing and working through it to get around the fact that we don't have everything written out in this many steps. Okay. So I'm happy to do a meeting like that tomorrow, for example, if you're available.
Yeah, I'd be open to that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's great. So I'll leave it to you to liaise with Quentin. And I just wanted to say that Tyler's doing a fantastic job as the volunteer coordinator, reaching out to new volunteers. He's getting all of them, guys, even ones that I would have missed. So good job to Tyler on that front. And then that's everybody. That's our teams. So then the other people that might have blockers or action points, but I think we all know David, Michelle, Quentin, Jody, Caroline, and Kate. And I think, we're comfortable enough to say if we have blockers. Does anybody have a blocker? No? We're all doing our own.
I have about 37.
Nice.
6 of them probably just came from me on Slack. Sorry.
Yeah, half of them know it. Things I thought, well, I'll just try and see if I can make it work. And then I've got this growing list for Quentin, but whatever.
So
can I just put in my readability tip for today?
Yes, do it.
Okay, so don't use italics. If you feel like you need to emphasize something, use bold. Italics are very hard for people to read, even if it's not print.
So I was going to say that, right, in my comment on Quentin's thing, because one of the things was in italics and one of them was in bold. But then before making unnecessary errors, I Googled it, and it said that it's actually only large blocks of italics. So then I realized that I should probably not bother Quentin with changing.
I think that's one of those, we'll put it in our style guide. You want to avoid italics. Oh, who was it?
No, I did not
Were
know
you,
that.
Kate? Was I working with you? And every time we looked at anything, you go, I hate italics. I hate italics.
I don't hate italics. I was actually going to ask, as a lawyer, there's certain terms that are supposed to be in italics, and I feel like it kind of hurts to see them not in italics.
Well, the thing is, I think if it's going to be on the form that you're going to print and send to the court, you leave that, whatever it is. If it's a Word doc, that has to be italics if it's going to be a site. But if you actually want people to read it, especially on the screen, it should, if you want to emphasize it, bold.
Can we underline?
Well, underline is also a link.
Underline means a link.
And also underline, if you think about the way people read, we know that low literate readers spell out every letter. But the more advanced you get, even if you're low, not super low literate, but as you get more literate, what happens is you recognize the shape of a word. You're not actually reading every letter. As soon as you underline it, you change the shape of the word, and then people can't read it. That's the same reason why you avoid all caps at all costs.
Though I will say that there are times when you want to slow people down on a form, and then you want to think about what you can employ to get people to slow down.
Those aren't.
But it
those
probably
aren't,
would not be making it
would
harder
not
to
be the
read,
way
though.
to
That's
do
different.
it.
What? Say that again? Those
I
would
don't
not
think
be the
slowing
ways to
down
do
means
it.
making it harder to read, but yes, I think it's a valid point, but it wouldn't
Yeah.
be about making it harder to read.
Right.
The readability tip is not supposed to cause controversy in the group.
Okay, sorry, right?
It's not a debate.
Yeah. It's always. Yeah.
So that's a font. Okay, so right now today's
I don't know
readability
what that
thing
is, but sure we can
was
follow.
But I'm just all I'm trying to say is that yes.
I'm
Well,
losing
that's
control of the
because-
meeting.
Never
guys.
mind. We won't get into it.
Bob
There's
the
a whole
font
thing
spider.
there.
Your
There's a
gavel.
whole thing there. But what I'm really trying to get at is that there isn't a like we are going to say hard and fast rules because it's simpler to approach them that way right now. But there are reasons to go against those rules. You know, there are reasons. So just don't be surprised by that when they come up in life. You know.
Well, as with law students know, with every rule there's an exception.
Oh, there we go. They already know that.
So
Every teenager knows that, Maeve.
So yeah, so that's today's readability tip from Caroline. Okay,
Perfect.
the next thing is maybe we can get an update from Quentin on the COVID housing form that a couple of us were involved in going over. And given the fact that we wanted to release it today, I think that it's important to get an update on that.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, everybody, for jumping in. David and I were talking this morning. I wanted to flag, I'm hoping it wasn't an exception process, because what our goal was to have a quick process for simple forms, but not to make people drop everything to do things out of the ordinary. So I hope that didn't happen. But just wanted to flag that. And we got some really good feedback from 2 of the subject matter experts that I reached out to, other housing folks on our Access to Justice Committee. I think those were actionable. I think we should implement them. Caroline might know best if Mariah is free to work on that today, or if maybe, because they are quite small, I could do them, and I could do them in the next hour or 2 if we wanted to meet our today release, or we could let Mariah handle them and that it's ready when you kind of push for this form, actually. So maybe as Mariah's supervisor, you're best to know.
So we were working on this morning. I think it's good for advocates, apart from those 2 language changes that need to go up. I think for users on the street, we need to make some changes. And
okay.
But the thing is, we're getting a GitHub part of the whole working process, trying to figure out. So the best way I know to do it is to be a developer on the Suffolk server to pull GitHub so she can make the change, pull from the repository so she can make the changes and do a pull request. Were you thinking that she would? What we're not sure is how to get the changes across. So we emailed you and asked her if she could have a developer account on the Suffolk Lit Lab. I don't know.
I'm sorry I missed that email, I guess.
So
I don't
after
see it,
this
but,
meeting,
yeah.
I'm sort of juggling 209A versus helping her do the changes on that.
I'll check in with you and maybe Mariah if we can get in a real-time call to set that up. Do you think right after this? Or?
Yeah, whenever you're free. I think she works today, so I think yeah, whenever you're free.
Perfect. So it sounds like we can release it as is for advocates, so we can meet that goal.
But you need those 2 changes before we release it for advocates.
The 209A?
Right? No.
Oh, I was like, it's been released. Stop.
No, this is the eviction.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we probably should change those. I was thinking in my head, an advocate, an attorney, we're talking about attorneys really here.
Right.
We would already know those nuances that were made too
but the
simple.
form doesn't, the form is, it doesn't reflect it. So you don't want you don't want the attorneys to do it and then have to change it, right? Which they probably would anyway, but.
I don't think it's something in the form that needs to be changed, or is it?
Yeah.
I thought it was just language in the questions. And we're maybe getting into too much detail now. But
yeah. So we'll talk about it
together and figure out if it's a today thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like Mariah should do it.
Yeah.
Close enough to do that.
I'm making her do it.
We should be able to do it by the end of the day today.
Yeah.
Potentially.
That's really exciting.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome.
It was a really cool form and built on a lot of work that we'd all done.
Right.
But, it just shows.
Are there, in the stand-up meeting, can we talk about some other, like mass access wide issues, or should that be something separate?
I think we're trying to figure out what this, sorry?
Okay, all right.
Do you have an issue you would like to bring up, Caroline?
Well, I don't like the collect list, the way it presents collecting lists to users. It's very confusing. You have a one up in the left-hand corner, you have a delete on the right hand. You haven't even started doing it yet. And then it says add another. I mean, the whole affect presentation of that screen it's really confusing to people.
So I think what you might be surfacing is a discussion about the form practices on the form and style and choices on the form in general.
Yeah.
And that is good to bring up here, but might be discussed separately. Does that make sense to people?
Mm-hmm.
So okay. So actionably, Caroline has raised this point. Now,
what do we do?
Where does it go? What do we do with it? Like,
yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe would it be something like a Google Doc and we just start listing elements and then we have discussions about that? Because I think if it goes into Slack, it gets lost.
I think that's right. We want it to be a style guide. So we want it to be a document that lists.
And not GitHub issues either, right? I mean, we can pull it from GitHub issues, but okay.
They're good for some stuff. I don't think they're good for this.
And there is a Google Drive, right? That has we would use.
You have access to it, Caroline.
Things in it. Yeah, we put the flow charts in it. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So do that. I think, and then we'll raise that in another thing to talk about, and people can all contribute. Because I think it definitely can be an issue that a lot of people can weigh in on. Okay, so that's Caroline's issue. Any other issues that people wanted to raise?
I have one, or I don't know. I always have many things to say, but so testing wise, is it all right if, unless anyone objects, I'm getting the testing team started on at least putting together what exists now for the 209A, because there are changes happening, but they're happening on a small enough scale that I think we'll be able to adjust once we know the final thing. And there's so much to put together that it's going to take forever to put it together anyway. So, so let me know if you have objections. Also, I need people to test the autofiller that I'm creating. That should populate a lot of the fields that are most annoying to fill out when you're filling out the form. And I'm not going to make the whole thing before someone tries it out, because it's it's plenty of work. So I'd like people to look at it and see if it's actually worth doing, or if it's not actually helpful, I won't keep going with it, right? So that might be an action for Maeve and myself to take in the testing channel, but I do want it to be on the radar.
Can your autofiller use, when you're on DocAssemble and you're logged in, it saves your interview answers?
No, unfortunately not, because that would only be, there isn't any way to pull in data yet. That would be a great way to, well, that wouldn't be a great way to do it. There are several things that are wrong with that problem. One thing is only one person can do an interview. So if one person is going through an interview, they're going to change the answers and they're going to complete the interview in the course of their test. So the next time someone looks at that interview, the questions will be answered and they won't be able to go through it from start to finish. Actually, that covers like both of the main problems I see with that. So unfortunately,
sometimes you don't want to have to go through the first 35 questions to test the last.
It's true, but that's not practical, because if I set variables with code, for example, say we introduce a bug that doesn't show people the page where they have to fill in their names. By the time they get to the PDF, at some point there's going to be an error, right? If I'm filling that in programmatically with values that the tester doesn't see, then it will be filled in and there will not be an error and they won't run into that problem.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about testing specific things, so you're not looking for that, but
if it's, I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but just say one quick tip, Caroline, that I have is to make a new file put a mandatory block on that file and list the variable, the screen that you're trying to visit. If you're just testing, how did my change impact this screen? And then ask all the questions it needs to get you to that screen and no other questions.
So this isn't about testing in general.
Yeah, that sounds really useful.
That's something that I've done.
Yeah.
I also have on my roadmap to do a more general way to load and save questions, which DocAssemble lacks.
Mm-hmm.
But I think is something that we need to have if we want people to do like a family of forms on our website, which just is a natural thing they're going to need to do really soon, especially with the family law forms.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to want to come back and fill in and not have to re-enter their kids' names, their own names, the name of the other party. So we need to get that solved, and I think it will help solve all of these problems, but it may end up being pretty complex, and it might not be realistic for us to get it done even in a month, but I'm going to start working on that at some point.
Not a month. That seems a bit ambitious, really, for that. It's a huge.
Depends how
we'll start with a small scale of it, and then we'll grow from there to handle more cases. Basically, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'll sort of butt in and say that I'm very aware that we have about 4 minutes left, and the conversation has kind of derailed a little bit. Something that I wanted to raise before everyone jumps off was, I'm not sure if this is the forum to raise it, but Quentin and David talked about giving credit on people on the form, the interview itself, and I'm not sure if this is the time and place, but maybe it's something that people can consider, and maybe we can have a bigger, you can refer to that message in the chat. I think it was the last night, yesterday afternoon. Look at what conversation has happened there, because obviously this is going to be directly involving you, given the fact that you're going to be working on it. And I think that it's a really good initiative that Quentin has identified, basically giving credit where credit is due, and the thought of how are we going to do that. So I would really appreciate it if you guys could go and have a look at that message on the group of messages on the channel. And if you could just maybe think about how you've seen it done previously, or maybe like just apply your mind a little bit, and we can have a talk tomorrow with people's informed views on the topic, pros and cons and all that kind of stuff. Does that sound all right, David and Quentin? Kate, everyone's nodding. So okay, perfect. Caroline,
did you have something else scheduled for tomorrow? I thought you said we were going to talk about something else tomorrow as well.
We're having a demo by Jason.
Oh, that's right.
And I think David had something he wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I was just going to say that Suffolk has signed the MOU. We are literally just waiting for the courts to sign the MOU. And we have cleared the TRO, and so I'm waving to my daughter who's going to NAP. So as soon as that's signed, we are 2 signatures away from launching, because the TRO is ready to go.
It's like the final countdown.
That is exciting. That's
really
awesome.
But and we finished our email test yesterday. We should say that too, successfully, post call.
So that's why we're now at the stage where we're ready to go. But it's worth noting that although this will be the official launch of our first public, we now have a private beta in work, and it's the 209A is out there ready to help people. It's just just to advocates. And with this new form that Quentin put together the other day, that might be out in private beta later today. So we're starting. Things are starting to bear fruit. So it's worth
celebrating.
Yeah. Well, I'm not holding my breath. I like to wait until we get the signature on the last one. But there are things to celebrate short of that.
Movement is good. Yesterday we needed 4 signatures, right? Today it's 2.
Now we're down to 2.
Yeah, progress.
That's 50% of the way.
Yeah, although it turns out that the 2 signatures we needed weren't actually 2 signatures. It ended up being 1 signature, but there were multiple people it had to go through, so it worked.
Okay, so that's just to refresh what the points are, I think, and also a reminder that tomorrow is Casual Friday. Last Casual Friday turned into a coding lesson where we put Eleni on the spot and watched her program something. Wasn't as casual as we intended. So this Casual Friday is going to be properly casual. It's nighttime here, so I'll have dinner. But you guys, it's a really nice time to meet and to learn about everybody that's on the team, and to make some new friends, or just connections. I don't know, you have to be friends with them.
Right.
So, okay.
Thursday, so I got to hop to a hard meeting. I can make Quentin we can
go. That's it. I think we're done. I think that's it. That's just what I wanted to say.
Perfect.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.